The massive chamber buzzed with the familiar sounds of alien voices discussing humanity's fate. Representatives from dozens of species filled the curved seats that rose in tiers around the central speaking platform. Their forms varied wildly. Some crystalline beings that caught the light like living diamonds, others with multiple arms and eyes that blinked in patterns, and several that floated in tanks of liquid-breathing apparatus. Park Jimin stood alone in the center of it all, his simple black uniform looking plain against the elaborate costumes and natural displays of the alien delegates. He had been Earth's voice in this place for 8 years now, and every day felt like the same battle fought over and over again. The Vrex Chancellor, a massive creature with gray skin and 4 arms, raised one hand to quiet the chamber. His voice boomed through the translation devices that every species wore. We gather today to address the latest human complaints about their status in our great council. Several aliens made sounds that the translators rendered as laughter. Park Jimin kept his face calm, though his jaw tightened slightly. 30 years had passed since humanity first made contact with galactic civilization. 30 years of being told they were too young, too emotional, too primitive to be trusted with real authority. The humans believed they deserved full membership, continued the Chancellor, his tone making it clear what he thought of that idea. They point to their contributions to our mining operations, their work in dangerous sectors, their technical innovations. But contributions alone do not make a species ready for true responsibility. More laughter rippled through the chamber. The crystalline Althan delegate stood, his form sparkling as he moved. Let us not forget the emotional outbursts, the refusal to follow established protocols, the constant questioning of decisions made by species with thousands of years more experience. Park Jimin had heard all of this before. The same arguments, the same dismissive tone, the same assumption that humanity should be grateful for whatever scraps they were thrown. He thought of the human workers currently maintaining alien technology across 17 different star systems. He thought of the human navigators who somehow found safe paths through space storms that had baffled alien scientists for centuries. He thought of the human engineers who kept alien cities running when their own creators could not figure out why systems failed. The human request is denied. Announce the Chancellor with finality. Your species will continue as junior partners in galactic affairs. You will accept the trade restrictions, the limited access to certain sectors, and the oversight of your activities by senior council members. This is not negotiable. The chamber erupted in approval. Beings chittered, hummed, and made various sounds of satisfaction. They had put the upstart humans in their place once again. Park Jimin stepped forward to the speaking platform. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet enough that the chamber gradually fell silent to hear him. 30 years ago, when we first met you, we came with open hands and open minds. We shared our technology, our resources, our knowledge. We worked your most dangerous jobs, maintained your failing systems, and solved problems you could not solve yourselves. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. The human was not following the usual script of disappointed acceptance. We asked only for respect, for a voice in decisions that affected us, for the right to be treated as equals among the stars. Park Jimin's voice remained level, conversational almost. Instead, we were told we were too young, too primitive, too emotional. We were given restrictions and oversight and constant reminders of our place. The Chancellor's 4 arms crossed in a gesture of impatience. Human, you will accept the Council's decision or face complete severance from galactic trade and protection. Park Jimin nodded slowly, as if considering this threat for the first time. Around the chamber, aliens leaned forward, expecting the usual human capitulation. They had played this game before. The humans would complain, threaten to leave, then ultimately accept whatever terms they were given because they needed galactic civilization more than it needed them. You know what? Park Jimin said, his tone almost conversational. You're absolutely right. Confused murmurs rippled through the assembly. This was not the response they expected. We do need to make a choice, Park Jimin continued. We can accept being treated as second-class citizens forever, or we can choose a different path. He looked around the chamber, meeting alien eyes with steady confidence. The Terran Federation hereby withdraws from all Galactic Council agreements, effective immediately. The silence that followed was complete and sudden, as if someone had turned off all sound in the massive chamber. "We're done here," Park Jimin added simply and turned toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the shocked silence as he walked up a long aisle toward the chamber doors. Behind him, no one moved or spoke. They sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The human had not begged. He had not negotiated. He had not even seemed angry. He had simply walked away. As the doors closed behind Park Jimin with a soft hiss, the Galactic Council remained in stunned silence, none of them yet understanding that they had just witnessed the beginning of their own downfall. The first signs appeared within 6 hours of Park Jimin's departure from the Galactic Council. On the mining station orbiting Kepler, 442b, the night shift supervisor noticed that the human workers had not reported for duty. At first, he assumed it was some kind of protest or work slowdown. These emotional creatures often made dramatic gestures when upset. By morning, every human on the station had vanished. Their personal belongings were gone, but they had taken nothing that belonged to the company. The mining equipment sat silent and undisturbed. The supervisor, a tall Vrex with purple-scaled skin, walked through the empty corridors feeling increasingly uneasy. He tried to restart the main extraction system, following procedures he had watched humans perform countless times. Nothing happened. The control panel displayed error messages in languages he could not read, even with his translator active. Strange symbols flashed across screens that had always shown simple status updates when humans operated them. Within hours, the entire mining operation ground to a halt. Similar reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The agricultural world of New Ceres found its soil treatment plants offline after every human technician disappeared overnight. The Althan crystal farms discovered their growth chambers failing without the human engineers who somehow knew exactly how to adjust the energy frequencies. Dr. Kim Miho, humanity's leading expert on alien biology, sat in his small office on Earth reading the desperate messages that filled his communication device. Former colleagues begged him to return, to help fix the problems that were spreading like wildfire through their systems. His response was brief, and he broadcasted to every human in the galaxy. "We offered partnership. You demanded servitude. Now you can learn the difference." On the water world of Aquatica, the Neth discovered that their underwater cities were slowly dying. The atmospheric processors that allowed them to breathe in their glass domes had stopped working properly. Green warning lights flashed throughout the city, and the water tasted wrong. The Neth engineers studied the human-built systems with growing panic, unable to understand how they functioned. The human maintenance teams had left detailed instruction manuals, but the manuals might as well have been written in an alien language. They contained references to concepts and procedures that made no sense to Neth minds. Worse, when they tried to follow the instructions exactly, the systems failed even faster. Commander Lee Sujin received the first official communication from the Galactic Council 3 days after the Exodus began. She was aboard her ship, the New Dawn, leading a convoy of human vessels toward the edge of known space. The message came from Chancellor Vort himself, his usual arrogance replaced by barely controlled worry. "Commander Lee, we must discuss the situation immediately. The Council is prepared to negotiate new terms for human participation in galactic affairs." Lee Sujin studied the message for a long moment, then composed her reply. "There are no terms to discuss. We tried cooperation for 30 years. You made your choice. Now we make ours." The real panic began on the 4th day, when the Kethran Empire's capital city experienced its first power grid failure in over 2 centuries. The massive fusion reactors that powered their civilization had always been maintained by mixed crews of Kethran and human engineers. The Kethran had assumed they understood their own technology. They were wrong. Without human oversight, the reactors began operating outside safe parameters. Emergency systems activated, but no one could figure out how to reset them. The humans had left behind technical documentation, but it referenced maintenance procedures that the Kethran had never learned. They had been content to let humans handle the complicated work, while they focused on what they considered more important matters. Now their cities sat in darkness, and their proud engineers admitted they did not know how to turn the lights back on. The transportation networks that connected hundreds of worlds began to fail as human navigators abandoned their posts. These routes through space have been mapped by human pilots who possess a strange ability to sense safe paths through dangerous regions. The aliens had always assumed it was just good training and advanced equipment. Without humans, ships became lost in quantum storms, trapped in gravity wells, or simply disappeared in regions of space that human pilots had navigated easily for decades. Trade between worlds slowed to a crawl as shipping companies discovered they could not replace human crews with alien ones. On the research station at Alpha Centauri, Dr. Park Hyojin packed the last of her equipment, while her former Rex colleague watched helplessly. The massive laboratory around them contained experiments that had been running for years, delicate research into new forms of energy that could revolutionize galactic civilization. "You cannot simply abandon this work," the Rex scientist pleaded. "Years of progress will be lost." Dr. Park Hyojin sealed her container and looked at him with sad eyes. "The work will continue. Just not here, and not with those who see us as hired help rather than partners." As human ships disappeared beyond the edge of Council space, they left behind a galaxy that was slowly grinding to a halt. Systems failed, infrastructure crumbled, and entire worlds faced crises that they had never had to solve alone. The Galactic Council had spent 30 years believing they were doing humanity a favor by allowing them to participate in galactic civilization. Now they were learning the truth. Humanity had been keeping galactic civilization running, and without them, it was falling apart. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy was dying. Chancellor Vor stood in his private office overlooking the capital city of Rexia Prime, watching the lights flicker below. Half the city now experienced rolling blackouts as the power grid struggled without human maintenance. The proud spires that had stood for 1,000 years were dark more often than they were bright. His 4 arms trembled as he held the latest reports. 17 worlds had declared states of emergency. The Kethran Empire had lost 3 entire colonies when their terraforming systems failed. The Alphen crystal farms that fed billions were producing only half their normal output. Most frightening of all, ships were simply vanishing in space. The great trade route through the Vega Nebula had been closed after 6 vessels disappeared in 2 weeks. For centuries, human navigators had guided ships safely through those quantum storms. Without them, the passage had become a death trap that no alien pilot could master. On the ocean world of Aquatica, Elder Neff Corvain floated in his command chamber, watching his people slowly suffocate. The atmospheric processors were failing one by one, and each failure meant another district of their underwater city became unlivable. The humans had built these systems, maintained them, and somehow made them work far better than the original specifications suggested they should. Now the Neff engineers stared at control panels they could not understand, reading error codes that made no sense. They had found human instruction manuals, but following them exactly only made things worse. It was as if the humans had been doing something beyond what the manuals described, some kind of intuitive understanding that could not be written down. Sent another message to Earth. Corvain ordered his aid, offer them anything. Full council membership, control of 3 systems, whatever they want. The aide's tentacles curled with embarrassment. Elder, we have sent 47 messages. None have received replies. Dr. Yoon Taehyun sat in his laboratory on Mars, reading the desperate communications that flooded his system every hour. Former colleagues, government officials, even species leaders who had never spoken to a human directly were begging him to return. The messages had become increasingly frantic as the situation worsened. The latest one came from the Vrex Science Ministry, offering him unlimited funding and complete research freedom if he would just come back and fix their failing medical systems. Their hospitals could no longer treat genetic disorders that human-designed therapies had cured routinely for 2 decades. He deleted the message without responding, just as he had deleted all the others. The humans had made their choice. They were moving forward, not backward. The collapse accelerated as systems that had seemed independent revealed their hidden connections to human knowledge and skill. The great library stations that preserved galactic history went offline when their data storage systems failed. Humans had designed the quantum storage matrices that could hold information safely for millennia. Without human technicians, the matrices destabilized and began losing irreplaceable records. Food production dropped across dozens of worlds as agricultural systems broke down. The aliens had grown dependent on human innovations in farming, water management, and soil treatment without ever fully understanding how they worked. Crops failed, water systems became contaminated, and entire planets faced starvation. Captain Choi Minsu received an emergency transmission as his ship traveled to the void beyond known space. The message came from his former commander in the Galactic Defense Force, a Ketran officer who had once called humans useful but unreliable. Captain Choi, our fleet is grounded. Half our ships cannot launch because their navigation systems are offline. The other half are afraid to leave orbit because we cannot plot safe courses through normal space. Please, we need your help. Choi Minsa looked at the message for a long moment, then shared it with his crew. The bridge fell silent as they read the desperate plea from beings who had treated them as second-class citizens for 3 decades. Should we respond? Asked his navigator, a young woman named Kim Salmon. No, Choi Minsu said quietly. They made their choice when they decided we were not good enough to be equals. Now they live with the consequences. The most terrifying reports came from the edge of Council space, where automated monitoring stations detected massive construction projects in the darkness beyond known stars. Human ships were building something enormous out there, using technologies that the monitoring systems could not identify or understand. When the Council sent spy drones to investigate, the drones simply vanished. Whatever the humans were constructing, they were protecting it with capabilities the Council had never seen before. In the Council chambers, emergency sessions ran around the clock as representatives tried to find solutions to problems they had never imagined they would face. The proud aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers now admitted they could not maintain the civilization they had built. How is this possible? Demanded the Althan representative, his crystalline form flickering with distress. How could one species be so essential that removing them breaks everything? Chancellor Vorth had no answer. None of them did. They had spent decades assuming humans were lucky to be included in galactic society, never realizing that galactic society had become completely dependent on human capability. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. Underestimating others could be a fatal mistake, and some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. The reconnaissance ship Silent Observer drifted through the darkness beyond the galactic rim, its crew of 3 alien specialists sent on the most important mission in Council history. Commander Zefk, a seasoned Vrex officer, watched his instruments with growing confusion as they approached the coordinates where human activity had been detected. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about reality. Massive structures floated in the void, each one larger than the greatest cities in Council space. Ships moved between them with impossible grace, their designs unlike anything in galactic records. The construction materials seemed to bend light around themselves, and energy readings showed power outputs that should have been theoretical impossibilities. This cannot be accurate, whispered Dr. Velen, the mission's Althan scientist, her crystalline form flickering with disbelief. These readings suggest they are manipulating space-time itself. Navigator Hearth, a floating Neth in his pressure suit, studied the long-range scans with 3 of his tentacles, while his other appendages worked frantically at the controls. Commander, I am detecting at least 47 different species working alongside the humans. None of them appear in our databases. Commander Zefk felt cold fear creep through his scale body. The Galactic Council believed they knew every intelligent species in this region of the galaxy. They had been wrong about that, too. The Silent Observer moved closer, its advanced stealth systems keeping them hidden from detection. Through the viewports, they watched human workers moving freely in the vacuum of space without protective suits, somehow surviving in conditions that would kill any Council species within seconds. On one construction platform, human children played games while floating near energy fields that registered as lethal radiation on their instruments. The children laughed and moved with perfect comfort in an environment that should have been instant death. How are they surviving out there? Dr. Velen asked, her voice barely a whisper. Before anyone could answer, their stealth systems failed. The human ship appeared beside them so quickly that their sensors registered nothing until it was already there. It was sleek and beautiful, built from materials that seemed to flow like liquid metal but held stronger than anything they had ever seen. Captain Choi Daehoon's voice came through their communication system. speaking in perfect galactic standard despite the humans supposedly having primitive translation technology. Council Vessel Silent Observer, you are trespassing in Commonwealth space. Please prepare to be escorted to a diplomatic meeting. Commander Zeph tried to activate their escape systems, but nothing responded. Their ship was held in place by forces they could not understand or detect. The human vessel guided them to a docking bay that should have been too small to contain their ship, yet somehow expanded to accommodate them perfectly. As they walked through corridors that seemed to adjust their lighting and atmosphere automatically for each species, Commander Zek realized they were seeing technology that made Council science look like primitive tools. Captain Choi De-hoon met them in a conference room that overlooked the vast construction projects. He was young by human standards, perhaps 40 years old, but his eyes held a depth of knowledge that reminded Zek of ancient council elders. "You want to know what we are building," Captain Choi said without preamble. "The answer is simple. We are building what we should have been building for the last 30 years, instead of maintaining your failing systems." Dr. Velen stepped forward, her crystalline form shimmering with nervousness. "Captain, the energy readings we are detecting should be impossible. How are you manipulating forces at this level?" Captain Choi smiled, and there was something both sad and terrifying in that expression. "Doctor, everything you think you know about physics is wrong. We tried to share real science with the Council decades ago. You dismissed it as human imagination." He gestured toward the viewport, where massive ships were being constructed using principles that defied known laws of reality. "We spent 30 years pretending to be what you wanted us to be. We used primitive tools, followed outdated procedures, and worked within the limitations you believe were absolute. We let you think your technology was advanced while we use it like Stone Age tools." Navigator Hertha's tentacles writhed with distress. "You mean you were deliberately limiting yourselves?" "For your comfort," Captain Choi confirmed. "We learned early that showing our true capabilities made other species uncomfortable. So we hid what we could do, work within your primitive frameworks, and let you believe you were the advanced civilization." Through the viewports, they watched human engineers casually reshaping matter at the molecular level, creating new elements that Council science claimed could not exist. Children floated through energy fields that should have been lethal, laughing as they played with forces that could power entire worlds. "The species working with you?" Commander Zek asked, his voice hoarse with shock. "Where did they come from?" Captain Choi's expression grew distant. "They were hiding, just like we were. Species that had learned it was safer to remain unknown than to reveal themselves to those who feared difference. We found each other in the darkness beyond your borders, and we discovered we were not alone in choosing isolation over subjugation." He turned to face the 3 council representatives directly. "You spent 30 years telling us we were too young, too primitive, too emotional to be trusted with real responsibility. You were right about one thing. We were too young to know that we should have ignored you from the beginning." The terrible truth settled over them like a weight that would never lift. Humanity had not been the galaxy's servants. They had been its guardians, hiding their true nature to protect the pride of species who were not ready to accept that they were not the most advanced beings in the universe. 8 months after humanity's departure, Chancellor Vor stood before the Emergency Council Assembly, his forearms trembling as he held the communication device that would connect them to Earth. Half the council chambers sat empty now. 12 species had already fallen into complete system collapse, their governments unable to maintain basic infrastructure without human support. The remaining delegates looked nothing like the proud, arrogant beings who had dismissed humanity less than a year ago. The Althan representative's crystalline form had lost its brilliant shine, dulled by the stress of watching her people's crystal farms die one by one. The Neph Elder floated in a mobile tank that wheezed and sparked, his people unable to maintain their own life support systems. "Connecting to Earth now," announced the communications officer, her voice barely steady. The holographic display activated, showing a conference room that took their breath away. The walls seemed to be made of living light, shifting and flowing in patterns that hurt to look at directly. Technology far beyond anything they had imagined hummed quietly in the background. Park Jimin appeared in the display, but he was not alone. Behind him stood representatives from dozens of species the Council had never seen before. Beings of pure energy floated beside creatures that seemed to be made of living metal. Ancient-looking entities with eyes, like stars, watched the proceedings with expressions of mild curiosity. "Chancellor Vorth," Park Jimin said, his voice carrying none of the desperate pleading they had expected. "I understand you wish to speak." Chancellor Vorth cleared his throat, trying to find words that would not sound like complete surrender. "Ambassador Park, the Council recognizes that mistakes may have been made in our previous relationships. We are prepared to discuss new agreements that would be more favorable to human interests." Several of the unknown species behind Park Jimin made sounds that the translators rendered as laughter, but not cruel laughter. It was a gentle amusement of adults watching children finally understand a simple lesson. "Chancellor," Park Jimin replied, "I no longer represent just humanity. I speak for the Commonwealth of Free Worlds, an alliance of 43 species who chose cooperation over domination." Dr. Yoon Taehyun stepped forward from the group behind Park Jimin. His appearance had changed somehow. His eyes held depths that seemed older than his years, and energy patterns flickered around his body like controlled lightning. "We tried to share our knowledge with you 30 years ago," Dr. Yoon said, his voice carrying harmonics that made the council members' translation devices struggle. "You dismissed our science as primitive guesswork. You refused to believe that younger species could understand things you did not." The Vrex science minister, who had once mocked human research methods, leaned forward desperately. "Dr. Yoon, our medical systems are failing. Entire populations are dying from diseases your treatments could cure. Please, we need your help." Dr. Yoon's expression remained compassionate but firm. "Those treatments were always available to you. You chose not to learn how they work because you prefer to see us as useful servants rather than knowledgeable partners." Chancellor Vorth felt the weight of his species' survival pressing down on him. Pride meant nothing when your people were dying in darkness. "What do you want from us? Name your terms." Park Jimin exchanged glances with the beings around him, and something passed between them that the council could not understand. When he spoke again, his words carried the authority of someone who no longer needed anything from the people he was addressing. "We want nothing from you, Chancellor. The Commonwealth operates on principles your council has never understood. We share knowledge freely, treat all species as equals, and work together because cooperation creates more than competition ever could." A figure stepped forward from the background, and the council members gasped in recognition. It was Captain Lee Soo-jin, but she looked different. Her skin seemed to contain starlight, and she moved with a grace that suggested she was no longer bound by normal physical laws. "The galaxy is vast," Captain Lee said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in frequencies the council members could feel in their bones. "There's room for everyone who chooses to move forward instead of clinging to old hierarchies." Chancellor Vorth struggled to understand what he was seeing. "Captain Lee, what happened to you?" "To all of you, we became what we always were," she replied simply. "We stopped pretending to be limited by your expectations." The holographic display shifted, showing images of the Commonwealth's true territory. Vast cities floating in space, powered by captured starlight. Worlds reshaped into perfect gardens where dozens of species lived in harmony. Ships that traveled between galaxies as easily as the Council's vessels moved between planets. "This is impossible," whispered the Altham representative. "This level of development should take millions of years." Park Jimin smiled with infinite patience. "Only if you assume that advancement follows the path your species took. We learned long ago that there are many ways to grow, many forms of intelligence, many solutions to the challenges of existence." He gestured to the beings around him. "Each species we have welcomed brought new perspectives, new capabilities, new ways of understanding reality. Together, we have achieved things none of us could accomplish alone." Chancellor Vorth finally asked a question that had haunted him for months. "Will you help us?" "We will not fix your systems for you," Park Jimin replied. "But any species that chooses to abandon the idea of hierarchy, that commits to treating all intelligence as valuable, that wishes to learn rather than dominate, such species are welcome to join us." The transmission ended, leaving the council chambers in silence that stretched for long minutes. Finally, Chancellor Vorth spoke the words that marked the end of one age and the beginning of another. "Perhaps it is time we learned what it truly means to be equals among the stars."